Usually the one thing the good questions have in common is Jake Tapper. He joins us from the White House now. Hi, Jake. How are you?
Hi, Glenn. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I want to start with this. The name of your book is The Outpost, the Untold Story of American Valor. How would you define valor?
I suppose it's a sort of combination of selflessness and courage, which don't necessarily, selflessness doesn't necessarily mean brave, and courage doesn't necessarily mean selfless, but the actions that these troops took in this forgotten and very dangerous corner of the world were often done knowing that they were putting themselves in harm's way, and they did so very bravely at a time in moments where most of us probably would hide or seek shelter, and they did so to help their fellow soldiers, to help Afghans, to help civilians. So I guess that's really what I meant.
Okay, if I may just go off the rails here with you just a little bit. I just saw The Hobbit last night, and
okay, I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen it yet? Okay. Gandalf the wizard is asked, why Bilbo Baggins? Why this Hobbit? And he said, perhaps because he gives me courage. And he's just an ordinary guy. And I watched that last night, and I thought to myself, that's really where we need to get back to. Our soldiers, in many cases, are the only ones that demonstrate actively for us valor, where right now is the time for everyone, no matter how you voted, who you're for, who you're against, to demonstrate valor and to be selfless. Is it not?
I think that's great, and you know what? That actually reminds me of these troops and the way that you're driving at, because so many of them are as you suggest, ordinary people, ordinary men, ordinary women, not into the manner born, not wealthy, not incredibly educated, not incredibly skilled or brilliant in any way, but they, thrown into these horrific circumstances, become something extraordinary. And also, to give credit to their loved ones, sometimes their loved ones are called upon to do extraordinary things as well when it comes to nursing their husbands when wounded, or picking up the pieces after they've lost their spouse. So I think you're really onto something there.
Okay, so what is it that... because to be selfless, you have to believe in something bigger than yourself. And we know what that is for the troops. We live in a world right now where too many people are driven by money and greed or fame. I mean, how many people, I don't know if you saw that YouTube video of the girl that, was involved in a robbery and then posted it on YouTube. I mean, it takes all kinds, but fame is something that drives people. And we're being driven apart as a nation. What is it that brings us together, do you suppose?
I think in a way we could be driven together by the thought of community, both in the grand sense of the American community and also our smaller individual communities. These are deep questions. I wasn't necessarily prepared for these, Glenn. But,
I'm just wondering. I'm sorry, Jay. I don't mean to.
No, it's great. I think one of the things that drives a lot of these troops, when put in these circumstances, without a lot of moments of reflection to think about larger issues that you're driving at, is the smallness of it. The idea of you're there for your brother, your squad, your platoon, and
it's
not thinking about it in terms of and not thinking of it in terms of 320 million Americans or whatever.
Right. Nobody is there for. Nobody is there for. I suppose that you are there in the grand scheme of things. Maybe some of them are there for a job or for education or whatever. Some of them are there for God and country. But when it comes down to it, and you're in the line, it is because I am not going to let my brother go. I'm not going to let him do it alone. I'm not going to be the weak link in the chain. But do you see in regular society, that being fostered anywhere? I mean, it seems to me we're being preached to on both sides. We're being preached to about, hey, do the right thing, you know, blah, blah, blah. But there's nobody really, or the concept used to be that we would come together on principles and values that we all had in common, right and wrong. You'd do something because it was just right, or you wouldn't because it was just wrong. Now, is that even there? What do we connect on if we don't have values in common?
I agree with that, and I think one of the things that's really been a strange bit of whiplash for me, going from writing this book and then coming to my job here at the White House and covering the posturing on both sides when it comes to the fiscal cliff and other disagreements, is that sense of shared sacrifice. And you know, on one level, I'll be interviewing troops, and they're all, to a man or a woman, are all, no, what I did wasn't brave. You should go talk to Romeshay. He's the one that did something brave. Or Rasmus. Don't talk about me. They're the ones that did something brave. And you come here, and it's a little different, but in talking about the fiscal cliff, and everyone talking about either cutting spending or increasing taxes one way or the other, no one is calling upon the nation to rise together and everybody make sacrifices, or all of us do this or all of us do that for the sake of our children, for the sake of the nation's future. It's a lot of vague talk. I don't understand it, because
isn't that coming though from Washington? Because that's not what the people are saying. The American people, what is it, 76% say I'll take cuts across the board. Across the board. I mean, they are willing to sacrifice. We're not stupid, but we're being treated like we're stupid. And I think I guess one of the things I'm driving to here is when politicians on both sides, but you happen to deal with the White House, when you can't get the media to say, wait a minute, I may be on your side, I may agree with your policies or whatever, but that's just a lie. That's just wrong. It's a lie. How can we make any progress on anything when people can look into the camera on both sides and just lie to the American people, and there is no guard standing there growling?
Well, now you're taking another turn, but I agree with your larger point, which is that I think the American people are much more smarter and more sophisticated and willing to make sacrifices if they feel like it's being done in an equitable way and in an honest way, where politicians are treating us like adults. And what still eluded me after 9/11, when there was no call for sacrifice or national service or anything.
Our sacrifice is to go shopping. That's not sacrifice.
And that's the idea. Like, what if that moment, and I don't mean to pick on George W. Bush or Barack Obama, but what if that moment had been, let us go back to what we were during World War II, where all of us pitched in? There wasn't anything along those lines, and it's certainly the same today. We're facing, I don't want to compare the fiscal cliff to 9/11, but obviously our deficit and our debt are huge issues. We need to come together as a... Yeah.
You just said you don't want to pick on George W. Bush or Barack Obama. I want to pick on both of them. And then you said, I don't want to compare the fiscal cliff to 9/11. The 9/11 was set to destroy our national economy to bring us to our knees. The fiscal cliff, whether it's this fiscal cliff or the next fiscal cliff, I have no idea when, but the target, if you will, is the same thing. Bring the country to its knees economically. I mean, it's just as dangerous as 9/11.
Well, it certainly could be very dangerous to the Dow, to the economy. Absolutely. One thing I wanted to touch on, just because this conversation reminds me of this guy in my book, Lieutenant Ben Keating, and he's an officer, and he was killed in Afghanistan, and they named this outpost after him, Combat Outpost Keating. He was very religious. His parents were ministers, still are ministers in Shapley, Maine, and he, as a young boy, he used to read the picture Bible, and he used to love the stories of King David. He used to love the stories of Jesus offering to wash the feet of his disciples. And he always used to tell his parents, especially his mom, that he learned more with his Christian Youth Fellowship than he ever learned in his officer training in terms of how to deal with the men under him. And it was that selflessness that actually ended up costing his life. He ended up driving a light truck on a road that was very dangerous because he didn't want anyone else to have to take that risk. That selflessness, which is a big part of faith, no matter what your religion, it is so elusive in this day and age. So much so that when a police officer does something noble, such as buying a pair of boots for a homeless man, it becomes worldwide news. That should happen. That should be like, oh yeah, that's great, it's nice, I did that yesterday. That should just be a common occurrence in this society. But
you know what? You know what's sad is the follow-up on that story. A couple of days later, the man is in the news and he says, look, everybody was using my image, I want a piece of the pie. And so he was coming and saying, I want more. I mean, we're just an upside down community. When I was at Fox, I complimented, I think it was Major Garrett, and a friend of mine said, Glenn, you want to help Major? Never ever mention his name ever again. He doesn't want to be, and they're speaking not as somebody who knew him, but he doesn't want you to be a fan of his. I'll say this here amongst friends. I'm a fan of yours, and I would guess that we're probably, just because you're a journalist, that we're not on the same side of the aisle. But I'm a fan of yours because you stand up for the truth and you ask the tough questions. And I think I told you before, we had a conversation that we're probably going to go, well, Jake Tapper, we don't like him as much now because if Romney got in, we know you'd ask him to hold to the same standard that you do. How does somebody who is frustrated with the press, how do we encourage the people like you to continue to stand? What messages ever get to you? Do you see? Do you appreciate? Do you not appreciate? How do we encourage the good guys? Instead of tearing down the bad guys, how do we encourage the good guys?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, first of all, there were a few moments when I thought Romney was going to win, when I tweeted, you know, watch out, guys. Like, all of you who like me now, you're going to hate me in 4 months. But ultimately, that did not. Ultimately, that did not happen. And in terms of my personal political views, I try to have as few as possible. I really do try to be as agnostic as possible, but much to the frustration of the liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans in my family, I try to just nod my head and listen to what they have to say. But I will say this. When people reach out to me in a constructive way, on Twitter or Facebook or email or whatever, when people reach out to me in a constructive way, hey, did you ever think about maybe this or that, as opposed to you're a right-wing hack, you're a left-wing hack, whatever.
Right.
I listen to criticism. I do. I know that, you know, my reporting is flawed and that I'm flawed and that I could stand to. But it's, I mean, I could definitely, I mean, look, I was raised in Philadelphia. I was not raised in Utah or Montana, and there are going to be things that occur to people just for geographical, culture that don't occur to a Philadelphian.
Right.
Although I'm sure we can all agree that the Eagles need some work this year. But the
Eagles need more than some work.
right. Perhaps some divine help might be in order.
Right.
But in any case, I think I know that, like, I don't know what it's like to be a factory worker making $2 an hour or $2 an hour making minimum wage. I don't know what it's like to be a very wealthy investment banker worried about. I mean, I don't know any of these things firsthand. So I am always willing to listen to other people sharing constructively their criticisms. Where it doesn't work is when people just like, you're a left-wing hack, you're a right-wing hack. Then I just turn it off because I get 100 tweets like that a day.
Oh, only 100? Wow.
Well, I've blocked a lot of people already, so maybe they're tweeting it and I don't see it.
Jake, I appreciate your work, and I appreciate you standing up. And we don't always agree with each other. I speak for myself. I don't always agree with you, but I appreciate that you are actually somebody in trying to get the story right and trying to hold people's feet to the fire. And I wish we had about 1,000 more of people like you. I appreciate it. And thanks for sharing the story. The name of the book is The Outpost, Great Christmas Gift, of Valor, and Courage, available in bookstores everywhere. Jake Tapper. Back in a minute.